Hello, it's me, Dr. Len Bayer, and I am here with Don Prosser, and we're going to record part 3 of our continuous ongoing discussions. And today's topic will be very interesting and very welcome by many of you. Oh, by the way, hello, Don.
Len, you're looking good. Good to continue these kind of very energetic conversations. We never plan anything. It happens organically. So I really like that.
I like that too. This is as casual as it gets. Although I do have a PowerPoint for the topic, and let's just say what the topic is. It's V2K. It's a microwave auditory effect, and the reason is because this coming Sunday, I will have a special guest on the Targeted Justice V. Garland podcast, whose main targeting effect is V2K. So as I've been preparing for the Sunday podcast, I thought, okay, why don't we have Don and I have a conversation? And so I'll test that on you as a non-target, and then I'll test it on the target and see what kind of reaction we'll get from.
Sounds good.
You are the representative sample of the non-targeted population.
I got my special non-targeted hat on.
All right.
But
you also, if I don't know if you realize that a lot of targeted individuals admire you for your open-mindedness, for your attitude, for your acceptance. The targets crave acceptance. They don't want to be isolated. They don't want to be separate from their friend society. And without that acceptance, it's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And you're so accepting and open-minded, and there's nothing artificial. It's not like yes, it's I understand what's going on with you. You truly understand what's going on with targets. So you're not a typical sample.
Well, we'll call me a plus alpha.
There you go. Non-target plus.
There you go.
Brand new. So I have a question for you. Before you were introduced to this whole targeted phenomenon, if somebody told you that they hear voices that nobody else around them can hear, what would you think?
Right. I'm not sure what the common person might. I mean, my background is in psychology, so that's a very classic sign of either some dissonance, meaning there's a disparity between what 99% of the people think is real and what the person afflicted would. And it's an earmark of, you obviously know DSM-5. That's the manual of everything that you classify any psychiatric disorder. And that's kind of an earmark of schizophrenia. But most people don't realize that's not the only one. And there are different ways. So I think our first thing is we want to jump to that conclusion. But after having investigated a lot of things that you're telling me about, I think that's too quick to jump there. It's too fast. I think we need to get some other criteria, or in psychology, there's a lot of interviewing. You'll ask questions and structure in a certain way that you're asking the same question, but you're confirming it in like 2 or 3 different ways. So I often wonder if someone says, hey, yeah, I hear voices. How much of that is self-created? We all talk to ourselves. We're our own best listener, I guess, in dark times. But whether those voices are negatively impacting their ability to deal with life, meaning they hear voices telling them to do harm to somebody, jump out in front of a truck, something above and beyond the very simple, I'm thinking about cutting the grass today. I'm speaking to myself in my mind about that, but that's not some terrible, egregious thing. Hey, Don, go kill this grandmother walking across the street. Very, very different.
would you ever ask a person who claims to hear voices where the voices are coming from?
Sure. Some of them, I think from a psychological standpoint, some of them are just cognitive. The person thinks of a certain sound coming to them. The other ones that they actually believe they're auditory. They may come from behind, above. The voice has a male tone, a female tone. It's only at a certain time. So I think that that would definitely matter.
Really? If somebody said, well, I hear voices and I can always tell the direction that the voices are coming from, what would
Hmm.
that tell you?
I would begin to say, is this something not cognitive? Is this actual, a physical, somatic type of thing? Is the number one, can we measure the sound? Is there ability to measure it in any kind of way? Or is it really happening to this person and we just don't have the technology to measure it right now?
In this scenario, you are still entertaining what I would call acoustic sound. Terminology is really important. So auditory effect, it kind of doesn't tell you whether it's from an acoustic signal or from some other signal. You're strictly talking about acoustic signal. So if somebody is telling you, oh, I can hear it's coming from that direction, or I hear it's coming from that direction, you're still talking about acoustic sound.
Right. I guess in my limited experience or limited knowledge, I'm thinking vibrational. So this sound comes across on sound waves, it hits your eardrum, you hear it. That to me would be a physical sound rather than some type of cognitive. I'm creating the concept that a sound is being heard. Right. So I mean, one is actual vibrational, you can measure the waves, the other one would be cognitive.
So we were talking about the acoustic auditory signal, but there's a sensation of hearing, and it doesn't have to be from an acoustic signal. Are you aware of something like that, or were you aware of something like that?
No, I don't think I was aware of the sensation as opposed to the creation, right? Let's say a cognitive malady, it might be the creation um, of hearing something. Where I think what you're teaching me now is that there's actually like a implantation or a different than auditory kind of impregnation into one's mind of some certain sound.
Yes, whether it's originated in the brain, or it's coming from a non-acoustic signal, it's an electromagnetic signal within the brain that creates the sensory hearing effect, sensory auditory effect. So we have five senses. Sorry, some have six.
Some of us have six, yeah.
All right. So let's say you close your eyes, and I will give you an object, and you can feel the object and kind of guess about what it is. Let's say it's a rubber ball, so you can sense the texture and the shape, and that is a sensory experience, right? So
Correct.
think about auditory effect as a sensory experience. So that sensory experience can come from an acoustic wave and create electromagnetic signal that your brain will decode as speech or music or some kind of sound, and just bypassing it and going directly to that electromagnetic signal. And then you can say, yeah, the source may be from some area in the brain that generates it, or it can be from some outside source, but it bypasses the acoustic portion of the auditory effect. So I just wanted us to have this framework, so we are speaking in the
Sure.
same terms. So you were not, before you were exposed to concept of targeting, you were not aware of exogenous forms of producing auditory sensory effect, correct?
I wasn't. There's only one part, I think, in psychology. There are some disorders where people can actually hear in color and so forth. I think that's a cortex, between the motor cortex and the rest of the body, with just physicality, like you said, holding the ball. But prior to this, no, I'd never heard anything remotely similar.
Good. That's a good answer. That establishes a foundation for our further conversation. Okay, so today we will be talking about the sensation of hearing sounds. Just the sensation, not the acoustic part. And we will try to understand the V2K phenomenon. Have you ever heard this term before you were exposed to the targeting phenomenon?
I had not, no.
Do you have any idea? Do you have any guesses of where it came from? Well, you know what it means, correct? Voice to skull.
Sure. Before that, I would have had no idea. 2K would have meant the year 2000.
Can you guess where this term came from?
The V is in Victor, 2 kilo? No.
No, voice to skull, V2K. This abbreviation, this term V2K, where it actually came from. Who named it that?
The V2K phenomena? Was that you?
No. It's U.S.
I
Army.
don't know who named it, no.
It is United States Army. First
Really?
used this term on their website. So thank you, U.S. government, for giving us this term. When you go to psychology today, you read an article about how targeting individuals are just manifesting this, find each other on the internet, and they claim these things that don't even exist, such as V2K. I want to say, excuse me, but V2K is the term made up by the U.S. Army. Okay, so let's start the slide. I put them in chronological order, and I try to use only the as mainstream sources as possible. So nothing, no speculations, just the facts from mainstream sources. So would it surprise you that this microwave auditory effect has been known since 1961? So when you said, I never heard of any sound being produced by any other means, it's been known since 1961. Scientist Alan Frey, and this effect was called after his name. It's been called Frey effect. Have you ever heard of the Frey effect?
I have never heard of that, no.
Okay. So he received some reports from people working at the radar station that when they go by the radar, they hear some clicking or some kind of different sounds, and then they go back like behind the radar and it disappears. So Alan Frame went to investigate it, and indeed he found that certain microwaves, when they are pulsed, the pulsation actually induces sensory hearing effect, described as buzz, clicking, hiss, or knocking, depending on pulse width and pulse repetition rate. And by changing transmitter parameter, Frey was able to induce the perception of severe buffeting of the head. Buffeting, have you heard of this term, buffeting?
Buffeting? No. Tell me what that means.
Buffeting means turbulence, some kind of vibration due to turbulence. So that buffeting was applied to this perception, like you're going through turbulence. And other transmitter parameters induced pins and needles sensation. That's been known since 1961. Frey effect. Big surprise.
It is, very much so.
Okay. Are you totally surprised that you never heard of it? Or
yeah, something Yeah, I have no concept that it even was studied back then.
So let's move forward. For the first time, voice modulation using microwaves was reported in 1973. So the research was done in 1973, but it was reported in 1975 in American Psychologist Journal by Don Justison. He described an experiment when the microwave energy was modulated to produce specific words. And so the scientists were able to hear, identify, and distinguish among those 9 words used. This is the first time the microwave auditory effect produced recognizable voice.
I see there was a Veterans Administration hospital there too. So I'm wondering
Yes,
if this was
correct.
performed there.
It was this experiment was done at Walter Reed, but the person reporting was associated with the Veterans Administration Hospital. Moving on, that you might have heard of, Project Medusa.
Mhm.
Okay, so this information can be found in the Navy search database among their projects, and it talks about a non-lethal microwave weapon developed for the U.S. government by a company later acquired by Sierra Nevada Corporation. It was a government contract to develop it, and Medusa stands for Mob Access Deterrent Using Silent Audio, that produce auditory effect loud enough to cause discomfort and or incapacitation. So it's a non-lethal weapon to deal with the crowd, to disperse the crowd, based on microwave hearing effect. But the project was canceled because the weapon produced brain damage. So that was never materialized. There were some videos I can actually find how it was tested on people, and they were just running away from the sound because it was just so uncomfortable, and it was dispersing crowds. So that's a microwave. It's a weapon based on the microwave auditory effect. Real thing. So we're in 2004. Now we're in 2007. This is reported by Wired magazine. The article was called "The Voice of God Weapon Returns." Have you heard of Voice of God Weapon?
That I have not. No, that's an interesting name.
Okay, so obviously it's self-explanatory. I mean, it can be a voice of anybody, but in this particular case, it was called Voice of God because it was used on Iraqi soldiers. This is information from somebody who attended a government workshop, and that was reported by Wired magazine. So they talked about the device that would operate at a distance and would deliver a message that only a single person could hear. It was tested in a conflict situation in Iraq and was pointed at one insurgent in a group who whipped around looking in all directions and began a heated conversation with his compatriots who did not hear the message. Voice of God. Wired magazine 2008, an article called Army Yanks Voice to Skull Devices site. So there was a site. This is the origin of the V2K acronym. Voice to Skull Devices had a definition on the US Army website, and then it was deleted, but the web archives allow us to look at it. And here's the definition: non-lethal weapon, which includes a neural electromagnetic device which uses microwave transmission of sound into the skull of person or animals by way of pulse modulated microwave radiation. This is going back to Frey, microwave pulsed. And a silent sound device which can transmit sound into the skull of a person or animals. Note, the sound modulation may be voice or audio subliminal messages. What do you think, Don?
So then this is the technology that they ramped up from 61 to 75, and now they've mastered it with this V2K. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. And that was before 2008. In 2008 is when they reported that the website was scrubbed clean from this information. It means that they were working on this device, on this non-lethal weapon, and then it became classified. That's what it tells me. We are going to 2012. This is the first and only news report by a local news station, which is an affiliate of NBC in Palm Desert, California, in 2012. Let's watch the report.
Hundreds of people in the valley say they are hearing voices in their heads. Those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain?
It sounds like somebody else is reading the book, only it's thoughts.
We're not having a group hallucination. This is actually something that's happening.
These men all live in the area, didn't know each other before the voices started, and say someone is playing mind games with them.
Mostly it's a lot of derogatory comments about whatever you're thinking about.
Only time I ever had a whole sentence, he said, "This is not about you," which just frosted me. If it's not about me, what the hell am I going through all this for?
Kevin Bond says he used to have a normal life.
I was living in the San Diego area. I was clerking for a federal judge, and I noticed that I was being followed by a whole bunch of people.
According to the websites, what Bond is describing is called gang stalking. He moved to Palm Springs to escape.
I started hearing, as you'll hear, hearing voices and what they'll call voice to skull or microwave hearing.
Bob Stansfield says his experience was similar and started a decade ago.
They were active in following me around here. And I started hearing the voices a little bit after the vehicular stalking.
Randall Ringer says the voices started when he was undergoing chemotherapy.
The first thing that was said was Randall Ringer. And I sat up straight and I went to into the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, looked myself in the eyes, and I said, did that really happen?
Bond says he's found more than 300 victims locally and is tracking others across the state through billboards. In Johnson Valley, a Freedom House just opened to help people who believe they are being targeted.
To many of you who find yourselves the object of covert harassment, that there is hope and that you are not alone, and that we are striving to find legislation and we're working towards freedom for all.
Jarek Robinson leads a national group called Freedom from Covert Harassment and Surveillance. He says he knows who's playing mind games.
Rogue government officials that are sponsoring this, also corrupt business officials, and private citizens.
And he also told us how.
Most of it is delivered by microwave, and I believe it's satellite delivered. Whether someone is on a remote location using a laptop or next door using the desktop.
Bond says neurotransmitter chips that run off body electricity have been inserted into some people.
And they assign cell phone numbers to them. The cell phone numbers are then run through a computer, and a computer translates your thoughts. This crime has been available to the military for 60 years.
We sat down with local psychiatrist Dr. Alan Drucker to get his professional opinion.
There's no scientific evidence and there's no objective evidence to show that what they believe to be happening is factually true.
So what does the doctor believe is behind these voices?
Information that I found on many of these websites really confirms or is consistent with what I see in delusional disorders.
But these men disagree.
I've been to a psychiatrist and they gave me anti-schizophrenia medication and it did absolutely nothing whatsoever.
However, Dr. Drucker says delusional disorder has no real medical treatment and is believed to start because of disrupted dopamine pathways in the brain.
These pathways then start to fire or get triggered in the absence of actual stimulation of a person actually speaking or the radio being on, etc.
Dr. Drucker says dopamine can be disrupted for a variety of reasons: a genetic predisposition, illicit drugs, and even chemotherapy. These men have their own theories why they're being harassed.
I think that I was targeted because I'm gay.
I reported someone for selling what I thought they were selling drugs, and they were.
Nationwide, this crime is committed about 60% against white women ages from 30 to 38. But in Palm Springs, it's almost 98% gay men.
It does tend to occur more in populations of individuals who are marginalized or in some way stigmatized in society.
But these men disagree and say police and the psychiatric community need to take them seriously.
When I worked with the government, I heard a lot of people coming in saying, I'm hearing voices through my tooth. Now I look back and I think, are they like I am now and I just didn't pay attention?
For them, the voices are a waking nightmare. And Kevin Bond told me they're working on a book project about electronic harassment and pitching the idea to DreamWorks. Back to you.
What do you think, Don?
Yeah, it gives you some real life examples of three gentlemen who experienced it. They also interview the psychiatrist. I think it gives a lot of credence to this is probably something more than what our current education allows us to understand.
That's a good summation. Knowing what we know, the only argument that people make after they've been educated about the possibility, the technological feasibility of doing something like this, the only argument that they have is, why would they do it to you? And that is not really an argument. And the only person who would have that justification is the person doing it to you. So that's really not a fair question to ask a victim of this. So really, since that argument does not work, what other arguments might people have?
Yeah, it's almost like we're blaming the victim and saying you need to justify that this is real before I'll believe in it. But the very fact that you're asking why would someone do that is an admittance that it is real.
Correct. And then, so for example, a diagnosis of a delusional disorder would be made not because you have evidence of delusional disorder, but because of these false reasoning. And that's what I have a problem with.
Yeah, so they're using the idea of, I can't understand this, so therefore you must be, and fill in the blank.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, you know how differential diagnosis works. That's not even close.
Yes, exactly. And I made that point so many times to so many doctors, and they just refuse. You understand my point. They just refuse to even entertain that idea. To me, I've been blessed to have a psychiatrist who is absolutely above your average psychiatrist, who thinks outside the box. This is the first doctor I went to with my complaints, explained everything, and he rejected the idea of paranoid schizophrenia or delusional disorder based on my explanation and based on the information that I presented to him, similar to the information I just presented to you about the feasibility of this technology. So that's how I ended up having just a diagnosis of stress-related syndromes or adjustment disorder. So I'm adjusting to this torture that's been done to me. It rejects the idea that I am at the age of 54, whatever, that I did all of a sudden I develop schizophrenia. That is really unheard of in the 50s, because if you haven't developed it by the age of, let's say, 28, that's not schizophrenia.
Correct.
No. Okay. So moving on from 2012 to 2017, when Havana Syndrome came on the scene. And what's interesting about this is one of the original reporting, the very first reports by the CNN. They listened to what has been said, and it was never repeated again, ever, on CNN or on any other mainstream channels.
It is mysterious, but there are a couple things from that reporting, that there is some place of blame, or at least looking seriously at Russia. And then the other is, it's not just a very disturbing high-pitched noise, but there might even be voices or a message, a continual message that people have been victimized by, this sound. That there's this kind of messaging coming from it. What more do we know about that, or who is adding any credence to that?
There are a number of it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
There are a number of countries, including the former Soviet Union and now Russia, that have microwave weapon programs going back decades. There's some evidence that they've been used in other countries against U.S. diplomats. That this was a very active program the USSR had. Again.
All right. That's the end of the clip. That basically it was never confirmed. But the reporter obviously did not make it up. She heard it. She received it from the reporting. But this is the only time it was mentioned in the mainstream media, that voice to skull, that hearing voices, is a part of Havana Syndrome, which is a result of using directed pulse microwave energy weapon against U.S. personnel in Cuba. I'm sure you're aware of Havana Syndrome, but you were never aware of this reporting.
No, not that there could be a message inside it or anything like that. Not at all.
Yeah, this is all these bits and pieces that I've put together. They're really important to tell the story, to convince somebody that this is not only feasible, it is happening, it's real, the technology is here, they know how to do it, they just keep it secret. And by they, I mean every country. So every country has now this technology. China has it, China brags about it, Russia has it, every major country, US definitely has it, not only by my admission, by the admission of experts, neuroweapon experts like Dr. Giordano. This is my last slide. This is a book that I read just about a year ago by Luis Del Monte, who is a physicist who worked for the longest time for Honeywell, which was a government contractor. And he published several books on directed energy technology. One of his latest books is called War at the Speed of Light. It's about directed energy weapons. And I pulled a couple of quotes from this book, from this 2021 book. Typically, hearing odd sounds or voices is a sign of mental illness. However, knowing Frey effect microwave weapons exists, a person suffering these sensory effects may not be mentally ill, but the victim of a microwave attack. And the other quote is, although it's a grim reality, we need to acknowledge these types of microwave weapons exist. And Frey effect weapons are extremely concerning, given that they have the potential to cause brain damage and mind control feasible. Are we ready to accept this reality? What do you think, Don?
I think your common person on the street, it may be difficult for them to understand it, but it's definitely a reality they don't want. I mean, they don't desire. Do they understand all the bells and whistles behind it and the technology? Do I? No. But it's something, if you told me this is happening right now, I can't just simply discount it and say it's mental illness. That's too easy. When if it is a mental illness and we can't do anything about it, then what? It becomes a problem of jumping from one wrong answer to the next rather than focusing on the one right answer that yes, this exists. As a nation, what are we going to do about it? So if we accept the reality, what if tomorrow they said, XYZ is legal and we don't approve of that, what are we going to do to change that? And this is something that only Americans are great about organizing. We organize behind all kinds of causes. Every major thing that's ever happened in America has been some group got together and channeled a cause. So will this be one of those? Will people get on board and will they know enough to organize and say this is something we're not going to accept?
I agree with your sentiment that we desperately need a public conversation, a robust public conversation. And it seems like every time we get somewhere, there's something in the news happening. And I'm not saying it's intentional, but this is the reality. When targeting news about targeting bubble up to the surface, something always happens, and it's the nature of news. There's something new every day to pay attention to, but we never get to that point when we have to accept the reality and have a conversation about it. There's some public intellectuals that talk about cognitive liberty, and they mostly talk about, when they talk about cognitive liberty, they mostly mean privacy, because it's now known that your cell phone can read your brain, that there are sensors, distributed sensors everywhere. Mind reading technology is real. So mostly people talk about mental privacy, but the intrusive part of this of the same technology, very, very few people talk about, or want to accept it, that your thoughts not only can be read but manipulated, that the subliminal messages can be sent, that the voices can be sent. Because I opened up my sort of history and the particulars of my case. I'll tell you that my voice to skull is constant, and these are members of my family who live in Germany. It's my brother, it's my mother, my sister-in-law, and my dad, who passed away last year. Okay. So I was receiving V2K with his voice before, and after he passed away, it just continued without any changes, as if he was alive. But not for a moment, I thought that these are actually my relatives talking to me. Although this is a very seductive thought that, they're somewhere, outside talking about me. I know better that this is not them. So it's all once you know that you handle this information differently. But modulating voices to sound like a certain person is an existing technology. Facebook brags about it. They said, if you want to have a conversation with your grandmother, all we need is a sample of her voice.
Right.
And God knows we had a lot of Skype conversations, so that is not that. I'm sure sample of their voice is not hard to find or obtain if you are really set to do something like this. So it's a constant distraction. right now we're talking, and I get sensory input from our auditory sensory input from other conversations. The minute we stop, the voices come back. I wear noise canceling headphones. I sleep in noise canceling headphones all the time, and I play audiobooks because voice is the best distraction from other voices. Because if you play music, certain frequencies actually enhance the this V2K effect. They're kind of riding on certain frequencies, and things like white noise, like AC comes on, the voices are getting louder. So living with this is no fun, but you adjust. Some people adjust better than others. The fact that my psychiatrist doesn't think that this is a result of a delusional disorder is a big help. This is why I can openly speak about it on the internet, on Twitter, with my friends, relatives, and neighbors, and not to be afraid that somebody will knock on the door with a wellness check and put you into a mental institution, because all I have to do is call here's a number of my psychiatrist. But other people, once again, everybody deals with it differently. But you can imagine that this is no fun. It's a constant distraction. Yeah,
not at all.
So it's been an interesting conversation, Don. I'm sure that targeted individuals would like to hear from you. How did this particular conversation affect you?
I think there's been 2 times in my life where I've had a choice to make. And one is where I'm shown something, or there's some amount of information, and I bank that somehow, and I say, okay, this is happening. Is this good, bad, or otherwise? And I make a decision. But the other constant has been, if you're given that same information, then you just choose to disassociate from it and say, I don't want to believe that. And you're like a little kid. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to see it. And people are like that. Some people will be in that camp and say, I don't care what you tell me. I'm not going to believe this. Those are not your champions. Okay, those are not the people who are going to help make a difference. They're not going to be your allies, but it is the people who the information you just displayed disturbs them. Those are going to be your allies, because they are kind of secondary effect people. You're experiencing this by yourself, right? As an individual, they're hearing about that. I would say the first thing that's going to go through anybody's mind is, what if that were me? And then right after that, they're going to say, what if it does become me? So people, as you know, we make decisions based on fear of gain or loss. So if something's going to help me, something's going to hurt me. And I think when folks start to think about what's the opportunity for this to happen on a mass scale, like not just Len in his house, but Len's neighborhood, Len's town, Len's state, Len's country. I mean, you're taking it from your couch to the 10,000 foot level. We're seeing the whole country. So those are going to be the people, I think, that will change their mind and then want to change their world.
That's an excellent way to put it. People who want to change the world, we're looking for you. Please join us in our fight. And Don and I will continue talking about issues that should concern all of us. Thank you for this conversation. I'm sure we'll have many in our future. Have a good day, Don.